timing. But then I'll be ready to go. Okie doke. The first question for today from Beebs. Question about long neck versus regular length. Any advantage to the longer neck? Have also encountered a reference to an A scale banjo, which I assume is smaller, correct? All right, so double question there. Long neck banjo is the first question. Any advantages to the longer neck? Well, yeah, Pete Seeger famously played a nice long neck Vega, and most of the longer neck banjos that you will see out there are usually modeled after his. And yeah, there are some advantages because you're really just giving yourself a little more real estate and a little more latitude when it comes to the range of your instrument. So a long neck banjo typically takes a standard banjo scale length, which might be around 25 inches for a bluegrass banjo or something like that. I think this one's 24 something. It'll take that scale length and extend it. An easier way to describe it, it's going to give you 3 extra frets down here. So what we're going to do is going to extend that neck, give you 3 more frets before what we're currently using as our first fret, right? So that's going to give us, by lengthening those strings, it's going to give us lower tones, access to those lower tones. So basically, it's like a reverse capo where we could take our standard open G tuning, add 3 frets, so a step and a half to it, and we add those 3 frets of depth, and we can use that exact same tuning, relatively speaking, but it'll come out as an open E. Now, I could use all the same fingerings that I use in the key of G, and it's all going to be a step and a half lower in the key of E. Now, that's not just for the key of G, obviously, or the open G tuning. I could tune this to anything that I'm used to tuning it to, play everything just the way I'm used to playing it, but it's going to come out a step and a half lower if I've strung it traditionally and all that, and I'm tuned up to tuner. So it basically gives you, it's kind of like if you're familiar with baritone guitars or baritone instruments of varying degrees. Baritone guitar, though, has the same effect where I could play just how I normally would play a song, say with G form shapes, and that baritone guitar is going to spit that out in a lower register, just by virtue of longer scale length and different kind of technical elements. So the real simple, succinct answer is the big advantage is it buys you this extra geography within keys and range. So especially if you're really familiar with some of the standard folk Americana banjo kind of approaches, so you're used to open G tuning, and maybe you play clawhammer or old time styles, and you're used to some of those familiar tunings like double C tuning and maybe the sawmill tuning, the old mountain minor. But maybe you sing along when you're accompanying yourself. Sometimes maybe your vocal range doesn't work with whatever key or tuning you need to play a particular tune in to get all the banjo to sound just the way you want. Oftentimes that won't jive with your vocal range on particular songs, especially if you're like me, if you're like most people, and you don't have a real fabulous, exceptional range to your vocal abilities. What folks like us do, folk musicians generally do, is once you learn a song, you translate it to your instrument, you find a key that works best for your voice. That's how I approach it anyhow, and most folks I know do the same. So this does buy you a little latitude there for vocal range too. And also if you're trying to play an E, F sharp, those aren't the easiest keys to play in, and if you're used to playing an open G or some of the standard old time banjo-y tunings, those keys, they're not impossible to play in. Folks do it all the time. I do it quite often, but it gives you yet another way to access some of those keys. So those are really the advantages. You just add those 3 extra little frets, or pretty big frets, down at the end of your neck or near the head of your banjo there, and you get a lot of new functionality. It's pretty cool. That is our question from Beebs. I'm going to jump up here and check the YouTube chat. I don't see anything in there. I might have to look at that from a different place, but right here I don't seem to have anybody chatting. So we'll see if we have other questions. I do have a question in here. Let's see. So follow up from Beebs. Does the 5th string get longer also? That's a good question. Yeah, I believe it does. You know, I haven't played a long neck banjo in a while, and I've never owned one. But I would assume it would, because, you know, when you're tuned down to an open E but directly relative to an open G, which I'll give you an illustration in a minute on that concept. When you're tuned down to an open E that's directly relative to an open G, then your 5th string should be down to an E. Obviously, I can tune mine down to an E right now, but it's probably going to be better tension-wise to have a longer 5th string. That's my folksy colloquial physics interpretation. But I'm going to look up long neck banjo. I'm going to look at a couple images online here and confirm what I was just saying. So it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The ones I'm looking at do not have an extended 5th string. They all just go to the 7th fret now, or I guess the 8th fret now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, they're like kind of down here. We're right here. We're right on the 5th. Now we're down on the 8th, I believe. So it looks like most of the 5th strings are just staying the same. Actually, every image I'm looking at here. So I take back the lie I told you a second ago. So I guess the idea there is, if I'm going to tune, if these are all, I have a longer range and I'm tuned all the way down to E, I can still tune this down to E really easily. So I guess there's no point in lengthening that. So now that's something we've done when we've played out of open G tuning, but we want to play in the key of E, and we tune this guy down to an E, and then right. So there you go. So they do not lengthen the 5th string. All right, that's about the extent of my long neck knowledge, but that's really all you need to know, I think. And then they're gonna have it's gonna always have it's got a little deeper tone usually when you get those lower ranges, or you're generally gonna get something warmer coming out of that banjo. It's gonna depend on a lot of factors, I guess. Let me check back here. I have a question here, but I'm not sure if this is somebody on the live stream here, or just somebody trying to figure something out. Yeah, I'll answer some of these questions here. I don't know if the question asker is actually here on the stream. They're actually coming in through my system as a guest. They may not be logged in. Question: I'm interested in learning 3-finger style and 2-finger style for playing blues, including Doc Boggs tunes. Do you have a lesson package for doing this? I saw on YouTube you were playing some blues, 3-finger Charlie Poole style, which at a glance looks a lot like Doc Boggs' way of playing. And they're saying, my background is just old-time climber banjo, but I really want to widen what I do, especially with 3-finger bluesy tunes. Cool. So, like I said, this is a question from a guest who may not be watching live, but it's probably worth answering here. And luckily, I could say you're probably in the right place. I don't actually have specific packages right now for some of the stuff you asked about, but the site is exactly that, right? So um, if you're inside your members area and you go to your products, here's where all that stuff is right now. So for one, what I was saying was it's probably a perfect place for you because the site, like me, is primarily clawhammer, but for the last few years, 2.5 years or so, I've added a ton of 2-finger and 3-finger stuff with a heavy emphasis in those worlds on bluesy and old time stuff. We got some Doc Boggs, we got some Charlie Poole, and we have a lot of similar styles and repertoire in there. Now, I don't have those more recent lessons in specific explicit lesson packages and courses right now, but I do have series of lessons. I'll give you an idea here. Again, I don't know if the question asker is already a member or not, so but either way, I'll show you. Sounds like they're interested. Presently, you'd go into your archived weekly lessons, and then you could scroll through this table of contents here. So all this stuff, those are all lessons. Currently, the way this is formatted, can't see all the titles here, but you can see some. Up here we have 2-finger, 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 3-finger, 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 3-finger. So you can kind of go through those. Here we have some more 2-finger lessons. Got some Lena Hughes focus stuff. She's a iconic Missouri 2-finger old time player. Some right hand stuff, some repertoire. And then with some repertoire, we do some Hobart Smith, and I do some analysis of that. Do some more 2-finger lessons here, some more repertoire in that world. So there's a lot of lessons in here on 2 and 3-finger stuff, and it's all kind of along the lines of what you're talking about. I've only got, I think, at this point, 2 Doc Boggs specific lessons, and maybe only 1 full arrangement of one of his songs. It sounds like you've seen those online, though. And then we get into some other stuff, various things like improvisation, repertoire, random stuff, some different fiddle tunes, and then eventually I get into a full music theory course inside this archive lesson stuff. So this is all from our weekly lessons, which have been going on for over 2 years now, I think. So hopefully that answers the question. And again, you know, the vast majority of the archival stuff on the site here. See if I can get my mouse to work here. My cursor is, besides all the weekly stuff, we have these archival courses like arranging melodies for clawhammer banjo. Most of these are clawhammer centric. My beginner course is clawhammer banjo, which I think is the best place to begin. We talked about that last week. Bunch of bonus lesson materials. That has a lot of guest people teaching stuff. In there we have Chris Kuhl and Mike Oberst and Clark Wyatt and Joe Siemens, Hubby Jenkins, Laurel Primo, all sorts of people in there, Eli Smith. We have Climber 101 and Clawhammer Blues. So most of these and all these lesson packs here, these are all clawhammer. And then we have stuff like the Jam Session Toolkit, which is style agnostic, right? But all the built-out courses are kind of clawhammer based. We have a perfect practice course, which is also, doesn't matter what style you're on. So if you're most of your familiarity is with clawhammer, and you might want to still explore that realm, but you're also getting into 2 and 3-finger stuff. You like Doc Boggs, you like bluesy and old time. Maybe bluegrass isn't your main focus, because we do cover some of that here, but only to about the degree that I tend to focus on that stuff on my own, which is not a whole lot. So hopefully that answers your question. And I will also try to make sure I remember to do that in writing here in case you're not on the stream. And hopefully that answered that question for some other folks as well. Anything else coming in down the line? I'm going to try to, just to make sure, See if I can open this up in another place. Make sure I'm not missing any of the chats going on out there. Try not to screw anything up here, folks. All right, I think we're good. Okay, so don't forget, you can ask me any questions right now. Office hours are in effect. We're ready to answer your burning banjo questions. And while we're at it, I'll shoot a shout out, a happy birthday to my buddy Shipley, who's probably definitely not watching this right now, but it is his birthday today. And I always think about him on this day. Okay. Any other questions, my friends? Nothing just yet. I did promise I would explain a concept that I mentioned offhand there, and that is, I talked about relative tuning. So when I'm talking about a long neck banjo, instead of your what we call open tuning these days, or standard tuning these days, your open G, instead of that being your standard open tuning, when you lower that register by extending your banjo there, you get an open E. So when I say it's completely relative, what I'm saying is you get your regular open G tuning is going to look like this, right? So your open E tuning, if you just want to tune your banjo really low, if your banjo can handle it, or if you have a long neck banjo, you could drop everything, right? You could lower all these notes a step and a half each. You're going to end up with E, B, can end up with, and what do we end up with here? Let's see, we have our 5, we have our OR1, and then our 3, and our 5. So you'll end up right here with these notes. But see, those are all, if we just looked at this numerically, like if this is an open G chord here, and this is an open E chord here, that means all these notes in this tuning are notes of the G chord. All the notes down here are notes of the E chord, right? So the E major chord, the G major chord. So that's our 1, 3, and 5 from our parent scale, right? So G is your 1, your D is your 5, G is a 1, B is your 3, and D is your 5. So that would be the same down here. Your E is your root note, your B is your 5, your E is your root, your G sharp is your 3rd, and then you get another 5 there. So see how that's what I'm talking about when I say it's just a relative tuning. So why do we care, besides just being nerds and wanting to kind of find connections and patterns between tunings? Well, we care because we are banjo nerds and we want to find these connections and patterns between tunings and other concepts, because it just makes us more efficient. We can think less and play more. So if I know that this open E tuning is straight, direct corollary to the open G, then I can play everything the same way. I can play Old Joe Clark exactly how I would play it in open G. It's just going to sound in open E. That's why I say it's kind of like a reverse capo when you have one of those elongated neck, longer neck banjos. But there are other scenarios where you want to be able to, or where it's at least very helpful to be able to recognize some of these relationships. That's why I have always focused on encouraging people to get into basic music theory, hang around that subject matter till it starts making sense to you, because once you can start applying it to your own playing, to your own studying and understanding, it just opens up worlds and worlds of opportunity for you. I always start teaching people, try to get them right away just making some music, give them the minimum amount of information, try not to overcomplicate things, get a few chords, get a good right hand pattern going with a couple variations, learn how to strum along and sing some songs. And then you're making music at that point. You could stop right there and just work on that and say, hey, I'm a banjo player, and you wouldn't be lying. But a lot of us want to go further, want to understand more, want to access some, build some more skills and repertoire and understanding. And all you got to do is just spend some time with this music theory stuff until it makes sense. I know it doesn't always make sense right away if you're unfamiliar with it, but just keep returning to it, and it'll start to make sense. And when it does, it just opens up all these opportunities. So lately, more than ever, I've really been focused on this, and inevitably when I do some reformatting of the website here over the next year or so, I'm probably gonna have some larger tracks where you follow a little more of a step-by-step or a tier-by-tier approach to learning, and that there's going to be a lot of music theory there along most of those steps. Like I said, the very beginning we keep it pretty simple and vernacular in our theory talk, but then we kind of move on. Alrighty. Yeah, Beeb said, thanks for that. I was going to ask about the fifth string on my long neck Vega. Oh yeah, he's got a long neck Vega, so appropriate to be asking some questions. Looks like we might have another question rolling in. Alright, that is a... see. Okay, I think our question asker from earlier is now actually logged in, maybe? I have a little trouble interpreting what's happening here. They're saying I don't have mail, so okay. Yeah, so they weren't logged in, they didn't hear me. Sorry. So I'll have to answer them in writing. Alright, any questions? Any new, exciting questions coming our way? If not, I'll find something to blab about for another 10 minutes or so, and then we'll move on. Those of you who are regulars, you know that usually Kelly's got a spin zone somewhere near the end of the session where she talks about something she's been listening to lately, or just particular musical recordings or artists that have been on the mind or heavily in rotation in our local jukebox here in Shea Better Banjo. I did get a comment. Black Banjo looking nice. Thanks. I really like this thing. I get some funny responses from people, especially people I've known a long time. They just kind of, they look at me questioningly when I break this out. They don't know what to think. That might be part of the reason I did it. I like just having something a little different going on here. But actually, I wanted to put one of those traditional plasticky Renaissance style heads on here. And when Brooks Maston made this banjo for me, he really didn't want to do that. We put a fiber skin on there. He wanted me to do the skin, which is his specialty, which I do have on my other Brooks banjo. We compromised on a fiber skin, but once I had the banjo for a little while, I thought, I want that a little brighter, shinier, piercing sound that you get from those plasticky heads. But I went ahead and got a black one just because I thought it looked cool, and I was inspired by Riley Bogus. If you're not familiar with Riley Bogus, you got to check him out. Great dude and a wonderful banjo player of the kind of known for his round peak style. That's where he lives and where he learned the banjo, so it makes sense. But just a great all-around banjo playing player, teacher, and dude. And he's a builder as well. He built some wonderful banjos, and one that at least a year ago he was playing regularly was one he built, and he had put a head on there that he got from somebody locally. And it's a little, I think, a fancier, maybe, quality than this one. This is a straight Remo head, Remo brand, classic drum and banjo head brand, probably the most common one. And they're kind of like a tried and true utilitarian source for banjo heads, so nothing fancy or custom here, except I did get the black color and put it on here myself. I've really enjoyed it. On this banjo especially, it has the brass, which can almost look kind of gold. And the brass with the black and with the inlaid classic pennies that Brooks puts on here. Oh, it looks kind of like a fancy Cadillac. So why not? This is my Cadillac banjo. Thought I'd throw this black in there. It also works really well for, when I'm giving you these up close looks on these sessions or in the pre-recorded videos. It's a little easier to see those strings against the black head, so that's also a big reason. But mostly, as with any good decision in life, it's mostly about looking good, right? So glad you like it. Somebody's asking, is Deering a good brand? In my opinion, where I live, there's not that many choices, so I wondered if that was a good, or if I should wait to buy one when I'll be able to travel again. So I'm guessing question asker is probably not in the States. If so, they might be in a remote part of the States and don't have a lot of access to various brands. But I'm guessing by the nature of that question, you're not here in the States, so you have a more limited stock to choose from. I think Deering brand banjos are really good quality. In fact, when people ask for, if they're newer to the banjo, I get a lot of questions about what's a good entry-level banjo. What good entry-level banjo do you recommend? So a relatively inexpensive banjo that I'll always try to push people towards if they're on a budget and they're newer and they're just asking for advice. It's easiest to just say, go to this brand, this model, and there's only, these days I've kind of only settled on the Good Time, the Deering Good Time, which is still their entry-level model, I believe. It's not as affordable as some people might like it. I think it's about, these days, I think it's in the mid to upper $400 in US dollars. So, I understand that's not cheap by many people's standards, and if you're not sure, you're just getting into the banjo, you're not sure if you want to spend a bunch of money, that might be a lot for your personal budget and financial situation. But I still kind of push people there, and if they say, oh man, I'm really looking for something closer to like $200 American, you're getting into some dicey territory there. There are always options in that range, but it's a lot harder to find them and to verify that it's a good purchase if you're newer to the banjo. So it becomes a bit of a paradox, right? So what I still recommend to folks at that point is to go look for a Good Time, a Deering Good Time banjo. Good Time is the model, Deering is the brand that the question asker is asking about. Look for a Deering Good Time and just try to find one used, hopefully in your area, but you can find them on places like reverb.com, maybe at Elderly Instruments, elderly.com. It'll be a little more premium price for the used ones there, but if you can find just a peer-to-peer marketplace, Facebook Market or something along those lines, you should be able to find a pretty good deal. And over the years, I've been surprised how many times folks who go that route have managed to find something that works for them. I even know some folks here in the States who managed to find something on Craigslist, but it's on the other side of the country, and they just get in touch with the person and talk it out and figure out how to have them send it to them and all that. So yeah, short answer, I think Deerings are good quality, so you can't go too wrong with them, and they're kind of the best banjo for the buck. Those Deering Good Times don't necessarily look beautiful, but man, they're very functional, and the stuff that has been stripped away in the process of making it more affordable is they did a good job in making sure they're only stripping away kind of the less essential parts. So when you get a fancy Cadillac banjo, a big part of the cost of this is for stuff that's not necessary. It's just little bells and whistles and bling. And sometimes we're trying to, some of the stuff like the fancy woods and brass and all that does contribute largely to the tone and tone quality of the instrument, but essential, probably not. You can you can get a lot of beautiful sounds out of a very simple banjo. That's part of the beauty of the instrument. So I like some fairly fancy banjos, but I also fully acknowledge the that simple ain't easy. Simple, but it is recommended. I did get confirmation. Remote part of Europe. Yes. Somebody's asking if I can play any Justin Bieber songs. I think I've only heard one Justin Bieber song in my time that I was aware of, that I knew. Well, I didn't know at the time. I was just in a cab or an Uber or something a few years ago and heard an interesting song. They were listening to pop radio, which I just don't listen to commercial radio, but I get subjected to it at times. And actually, it was kind of an interesting arrangement. It was wasn't much instrumentation in there. A lot of vocals, and I thought the production was interesting. So I actually did kind of inquire and found out that it's Justin Bieber song. Otherwise, I don't know much about old Justin. And there is an emoji there accompanying. I think that was a tongue-in-cheek question. And all right, our asker from remote Europe said, "Thanks for the answer. I'll go for this." Yeah, I think you should. It's a good brand, and it's good if you're in remote Europe, and the only thing you really have your eye on and access to is a Deering banjo. I think you're lucky, actually, because it's probably remote parts of the states where you might have to travel quite a distance to get your hands on anything comparable. All right. Always good questions. That's a question. Yeah, any of these questions that we answer repeatedly is good, because you want to reinforce this information, and there's always new people watching, listening, and asking. And so that question, there's a reason that's such a frequently asked question. It's an important one. When you're getting your first banjo, you're trying to upgrade to your first decent banjo. It's hard to really separate the wheat from the chaff. And like I said, you're not necessarily equipped with the skills in the beginning, so it helps to have somebody who can guide you a little bit. And Beebs is asking, your banjo is a Brooks, isn't it? Are there other independent banjo makers you can recommend? Looking for an addition to my collection. I want this one to be the best I've got. Yes. Yes and yes to both of those. So yes, this is a Brooks banjo. I'm tethered by my headphones right now, but I've also got another Brooks banjo. The one you see in most of my videos up until a year or two ago will be what I still consider my main Brooks banjo. That one is strung with Nile gut minstrel strings, and it has been for about a year. So when you see me playing that Nile gut minstrel string banjo, that's my Brooks banjo. When you see the older videos where I'm playing a steel string, old-timey looking banjo, that's my Brooks banjo. This is my Cadillac Brooks banjo. Yes, so are there other independent banjo makers I recommend? Yeah, probably. The only I have, obviously I'm devoted to Brooks. I've always loved his banjos since I first met him. I first met him after he had made about 3 of them, and then I kind of reunited with him a few years later and started buying some of these things from him. And of course we talk about him here on the channel, and a lot of you all have grabbed some as well. So I always recommend his. But there are a lot of great makers out there. If you're looking for kind of like if you want a lot of choices and you're looking for, I would say, a mid-level company that's not a huge company, but they get some work done, they get some production done, you can check out Ohm Banjos, and there's more folks that I kind of know on a fairly personally. It's a small world out there. But Chuck and Tanya at Ohm Banjos, super good people. Chuck's been making banjos forever. And they have a decently, I would say large, but it's like a medium-sized production facility, right? But they make some really quality banjos and make, I think, a really nice variety of styles. A lot of individual makers like Brooks, you're going to get kind of a base style and you can customize it all you want and you can ask for customizations, but you're going to be working within kind of the framework of their style, and you might not get a huge amount of variance in versatility in the offerings or in what you can ask them to make for you. So a place like Ohm can probably accommodate just about anything. You can probably find some new or used Ohm banjo out there that probably will suit your purposes. I've played some wide necks, some long necks, some open backs, some resonators, all the whole gamut. So partially, all these people, all these folks I recommend, I usually have at least had some interactions with them, and that goes a long way, I think, too. Just having actual connections with some of these makers. So others that I know, well, others that I've played that I think are pretty decent. The Pisgah banjos, Pisgah, Pisgah, made out there in the southeast. If you've seen the video with Uma playing with me at the time, she was a young girl playing a banjo that looked really similar to my Brooks banjo. That was a Pisgah, and I've played a lot of those over the last few years, and they're always right there, probably in that zone that I like from an old time banjo. Very solid, consistently quality every time I pick one up. A maker that is pretty expensive most of the time, and I've had varying results from picking up Chuck Lee banjos. Every once in a while I pick one up and think, this thing is amazing. And oftentimes I pick one up and think, this looks amazing. But, So, no offense to anybody out there who's playing and loving their Chuck Lee. I go back and forth. Some of them, like I said, I don't know. There's so many factors, right? So it's like, how do you attune to a particular instrument or a particular maker? There's going to be some you're going to vibe with, some you aren't. But me personally, Brooks, the Pisgahs have always been really good. There's a lot of makers down there in the southeast you might want to check out. Otherwise, off the top of my head, Jason Romero from Canada, Jason and Ferris Romero, wonderful recording artists, musicians, and banjo makers. They're worth checking out. I think the wait list last I checked for a Romero banjo was 2 or 3 years. So you'd have to exercise quite a bit of patience, but maybe you could spend that time to save up all the money it's going to cost you to buy one too. So there's some talk on fancy banjos. The key is to have some fun with it. Beebs, you are very close to Brooks. He's in Portland last I knew, Portland, Oregon. So you could probably go get your hands on one, even though he makes them to order. So you would have to just kind of trust it's going to come out the way you want it. UK Tony, how you doing? Heard from UK Tony there. Lefty Tony out there in the UK, obviously. Running late. All good in the UK. We'll watch and catch up. Cool. Good to hear from you, Tony. Always good to hear from you. Hope your tomatoes are doing well and getting ready to rock this year. I got confirmation that Devendra was just joking about Justin Bieber. I'm not against playing, a pop song on the banjo. I just, I don't know much about Justin Bieber. I don't think that's my jam. And then I heard back from MKJL. That was our remote European question asker on YouTube, asking about Deering and explaining that they were out there in remote parts of Europe and Yeah, I was talking about you're pretty lucky if you can grab a Deering, and they responded. It's either Deering or Gold Tone, so not much of a choice. Yeah, now so Gold Tone is one of those. While we're on the subject, Gold Tone is one of those brands that does indeed make some good banjos, but not all their models are good. And I'd say probably at best we're looking at 50% of their models would be, in my opinion, worth the money you're throwing at them. So when you get into the lower end of the gold tones, the less expensive ones, it gets pretty hit and miss, in my opinion. So again, if you're holding one of these in your hands right now that I'm talking about, don't break your computer screen and don't yell at me or send me mean emails. I'm just telling you my personal opinions and experience. Um, but there's things like the Bob Carlin model of the gold tone clawhammer banjos. That one I believe comes in at a retail price around $1,000 US, which might sound extreme for some of you, but I tell you, anytime I've played one of those, the I don't necessarily love the finish they use on that thing, but it looks decent and plays really well. It's a lot like my recommendation for the Deering Good Time. It's like so much more banjo for your buck than you're going to get otherwise. So when I play that Bob Carlin gold tone, anytime I've played any of those, I always think this is definitely worth the price they ask, and it's worth a bit more in the tone and the way that it plays. And they use some pretty decent quality parts there, but I would always you can always once you get to that range, you probably have a lot of options, so it's not a budget banjo. But again, yeah, like I said, you're lucky to have that Deering option. All right. We're about to wrap up here. Actually, we have gotten through our time. Um, and I don't have a spin zone for you. Yesterday, I was listening to kind of passively to a collection of upbeat bluegrass songs that Apple Music had just, you know, an Apple Music bot had put together for me. And I said, why not? I'll listen to this list. And it was pretty fun. I was kind of passively listening. I wasn't paying too much attention to the specific artists, but it was all upbeat bluegrass stuff. And it reminded me that I do tell some of you from time to time that I'll cover some more bluegrass on this channel and in the Play Better Banjo members area. So I haven't forgotten y'all, and I am planning on doing so. I know Marg is, who may be here today, I don't know, but Marg has asked me not too long ago about the Ballad of Jed Clampett. And it's one I never actually learned, but one that folks of my generation definitely heard. Probably one of the first banjo songs I heard. My neighbor used to play it on his bluegrass banjo when I was growing up. So that's one I might try to learn and share with you all. Honestly, if I do, I'll probably consult my library over here and look at the Earl Scruggs book. He's probably got an arrangement in there, which would be a good source to go to if you want to learn something like that. So yeah, there's going to be some bluegrass banjo stuff coming down the way. I keep it to a relative minimum in the lesson materials because I'm trying to fill some other parts gaps of the banjo world, and also just because that's kind of where my focus has always lied. I like bluegrass banjo, but it's never been a focus of mine, and it's just something that I know how to do on a very rudimentary level, and I don't spend a lot of time doing it, so I can only convey so much. But one thing I can do is work up arrangements and share them with you and walk you all through them. So we'll do that. And one final thing I'll say as we're wrapping up this call is thank you all for being here. Yeah, somebody on there is saying, "Oh, hey, it's Chris from Tales of the Boatman. I've got a Bob Carlin gold tone and it's great." Hey, while I've been promoting my Brooks for Brooks Banjos, I've been promoting kdhx.org for the radio station that Kelly is the executive director of, and we are all volunteers of as well. They're doing a drive right now. Support them. While we're talking about that, go check out Tales of the Boatman if you haven't already. That's Chris over there on YouTube. Check out Tales of the Boatman. You can see him in the chat and follow him over there. Awesome stuff. Not just banjo, a lot of international stuff. And thanks for jumping on and commenting, Chris. Appreciate it. We're gonna get one of these days. I'm gonna have more time, and I'm gonna get have the impetus to hit Chris up and do some sort of collaboration. I think it'd be fun. Haven't done any YouTube collaborations with any of the other banjo folks, but when I do, I'm gonna start right there with Tales of the Boatman. Good stuff. What was I saying? Oh, I was gonna say, for all of you out there, this is for YouTubers and for members inside the Play Better Banjo area. I'm gonna say the other thing I'll be focusing on in the year moving forward is request. I'm always getting to a request here and there. We'll be doing a little more focus on that inside the members area. Some of that obviously will leak out to the YouTube as well. So keep all the requests coming. I've been queuing those in a little more of an organized fashion, and I'm going to attempt to try to approach them a little more in the order, closer to the order in which they come. No guarantees, but you'll start to see more of those coming back at you. All right. I'll probably do another one of these next month that I'll share with y'all. And again, if you're not going to go straight to practicing and putting all of my great banjo wisdom to work right now, then go check out Chris's channel, Tales of the Boatman. Give him some love, subscribe, and check out his wonderful music. Okay, I'm out of here. Love you all, and I will be back at you